And you're live.
Great, thank you. Good morning, welcome the day before Valentine's Day, February 13th, 2023, to another exciting budget committee meeting. So in an effort to not waste any time, we're gonna jump right into our first item, which we have is the energy performance review contract, or an energy performance contract review. Mr. Graham, you have brought some special guests today that I think are going to be making a presentation to us, and if you don't mind introducing them and giving us, take it away.
Thank you. I just want to give a little background information. In October, we did a presentation on what an EPC is, and that presentation is available on the website. We'll make this presentation available on the website following the meeting as well. Myself and Ms. Manuel met with several ESCOs, which are energy contractors, and looking at the potential for an EPC. The district did do an EPC starting in 2017, and that's some of what this company is going to talk about. Unfortunately, an energy performance contract is a funding mechanism to fund facilities improvement measures, FIMs. And what you typically look for are low-hanging fruit is an industry term that is easy, quick payback items, which will then pay for larger FIMs, roofs, spoilers, things that still have energy savings, but not as quick of a payback. Unfortunately, in the project that was done, while we could save energy and we are saving money, it took a lot of that equity out of the project. So we haven't been able to determine that we're going to be able to get the same amount of funding for a project, but we hopefully have some other potentials and alternatives to that. This is Renew Energy Solutions. So this is Mike Vandenberg and Tim Pike, and I'm going to let them take it over from here.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday after Super Bowl. When Brian told us to this meeting, I was like, the 13th. I'm like, that is 9 a.m. Monday morning, right after the Super Bowl news. You were 100% right. And I said, I live in Port Jeff, and I gotta go to Port Washington at 9 a.m. It's like I gotta wake up at 5.
It's our week to be
But-
considerate.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night too.
Yes,
But I am all in favor of making this a national holiday.
Yes.
I mean, I think we have enough holidays, that we can throw another one in.
Why not?
But anyway, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brian and Kathleen, for meeting with us beforehand several times to get us to where we are today. So we were called in to ask to help evaluate the district and look at some of the opportunities that may be still available to conserve energy, which is a tremendous thing. And also with conserving energy, be able to hopefully gain some funds where we could reuse that money to do upgrades to the building or buildings. So we have 2 engineers with our firm, and they both coincidentally have different opportunities to go to the Super Bowl. So the really, really smart guys aren't here, so you're stuck with us. I'm the owner, and I know really how to hire really smart guys. That's what I've learned in life. And Tim is our vice president of marketing and sales. So that's who we are. So just real quick, as Brian mentioned, an EPC is really, it's a tool that is used very often in public facilities, schools especially, government buildings, any place where it's municipality. An EPC is a great tool to go ahead and reduce your energy costs as significantly as possible. And with those savings, between doing the upgrades of lighting, boilers, unit ventilators, windows, roofs, so on, etc., you can take that money, finance it out over 20 years, finance the savings out, get that additional money to go ahead and do upgrades to the district. And so here's where we are, just to get us started. We talked a little bit about Renew. So just a little bit about our company in particular. So we've been serving the school community for over 30 years. I've been doing it with my partner for over 30 years in a different array of companies that we have that services the K-12 communities throughout Long Island and into Hudson Valley. We're a pretty sizable company. We employ over 500 people. Our Array of companies goes from Renew Contracting, Renew Restoration, also Milburn Flooring, Sunrise Door Solutions. This all falls under our umbrella. And all those companies work within the school community almost solely. Definitely a municipality business. So we do court buildings, government buildings, police stations, but 90% of our work is schools. And you couldn't tell me a school between Albany and Montauk that we probably haven't worked in over the past 30 years. And we do strive, and we do think a lot of our successes because of our obsession for customer service is the best way to put it. We are completely obsessed with customer service. So going into a new arena, we are new to this arena. We've done this before many times, but we did it with, who are now our competitors, the Johnson Controls, the Honeywells. So what it is, they would come in and pitch you guys on energy performance, and then they'd hire us to build the project. And we've been doing that with them for about 18 years. And we've noticed a big change, and this district happens to be a prime example of how that change occurred. When they first came in and doing this, and the energy performance contracts were rather new to the K-12, school districts, they would come in and, listen, 20 years ago, we had really bad lighting. It was all what they call T12 bulbs, in the classrooms, and to switch them to a T8 bulb was a tremendous amount of savings. Probably 60% savings in your utility bills. And then it's got even more advanced where you could go LEDs, which really helps with the savings again. So the idea is to capture as much savings, just as we were talking about, and then use that money to do renovations in the district. And that was really the way the CPC business was going for a while. You would go in, you capture a tremendous amount of savings, and you go do ceilings and boilers and your ventilators, and you use that money. And then as the years went on, the ESCOs, the energy solution companies, really figured out how to not give you so much back and keep those profits for themselves. Okay, and that's really so. As we're doing these projects, we do tremendous projects with lighting and all sorts of things, and then over the years it would shrink, and it'd be like, but what happened? The savings is still there. Actually, the lighting's even more improved. How is what the customer's getting back shrinking? And they would make up whatever excuses, and I'm just the dumb contractor, right? I was like, whatever you tell me to do, I'll just go do. And then just being obsessed with customer service, we really was just like, this is crazy. Like, they're really not doing the right thing. They're stuffing their pockets with profit rather than giving as much back to the district as they possibly could.
Mike, if I can interject for 1 second, I'd like to give you a real life example because it came up at Matter Haven. If you remember, we did our facilities walkthrough in September, and one of the comments was that the hallways, the corridors were not bright, not lit.
Yes.
So if that had been an owner-driven EPC contract, we would have said, this has existing T8 lighting, there's a lot of opportunity to save money by changing that lighting, but we would take the energy, the equity out of that energy savings and pay for new fixtures and new ceilings so that you would get that bright corridor feel. Instead, what happened was they opened the fixtures up, they took the existing hardware out, they put LED lights in, so you got that savings, but then they closed the fixtures back up and you didn't get any increased lumens, you didn't get a new ceiling, you didn't get any of that aesthetic benefit, you just got the energy savings. The energy savings is important, it's environmentally conscious, it pays for the project, but you didn't take any of that equity and also improve your facility at the same point. And that's, with
So Brian, what you're saying, just so that I understand, is that the two examples you just gave is the same exact savings? Did one give us better savings? Because you said there was equity, like, is there
so when
a
you
cost difference?
No, when you would get that energy savings, it's spread out over 18 years, and then you use that money that you're going to save to pay for other aspects of the project, like doing the ceiling,
Okay.
like changing a full fixture,
Right.
as opposed
So
to
you'd
putting
be
an LED
reinvesting the
bulb in the
savings,
existing fixture.
so you'd be reinvesting the
Yes.
savings as opposed to banking it, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying, okay.
But if you say be smart about it
But you-
and improve what's there, because we
Right.
certainly never had a conversation about whether we should be reinvesting any of it, and that should be his decision.
That's come through again, I want to use, because that was something you guys pointed out to us in
Yes.
September, that, hey, these hallways should be brightened up, but in
Right.
2017, there was a easy way to do that.
And it
We
wasn't.
missed that, so now we're at a point where we have to change those fixtures again 3 years later, and we're not gonna get any savings, because we're going from LED to LED. We have to fund that ceiling out of another mechanism, so I just want you to understand, I wanted you to see it in a real example.
That's a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So, as these, ESCO companies are doing, energy performance contracts for the district, we've noticed they were shrinking. What the district was getting back in return just kept shrinking more and more and more every year. And to us, we just, knowing the business enough, we're like, this isn't right. And for 3 years, my partner and I have been researching and scouring the entire industry from coast to coast and really putting a plan together to open up our own ESCO company and really give the schools back what they deserve to get back when they're actually saving money. That's always been our goal. And for us, this is a tremendous risk. A lot of times you do energy performance contracts and you don't get as much savings as you thought, and you didn't get as much, back out of the savings as you thought you would have. And if we were just solely an energy performance contract, we would be the energy performance company. We do the same thing, just go in and make as much profit as we can and leave. But the difference between us and everybody else is we're going to be here when this is over, because we do your construction. We build the schools. We do the restoration in the schools. We do the flooring in the schools. We do your doors in the schools. We do your security vestibules in the schools. So we're here. We're not going anywhere. And so when and if we had the opportunity to do a project for you guys, when the project's over, we're not gone. We're still here looking to do other stuff for you. And when you're doing that, you really got to make sure you do these right. Every division we open, we know if we didn't do it right, it's going to affect the rest of our divisions. They're not just going to be like, oh, well, Renew messed up. They didn't give us as much savings as we thought. Let's call them up when we need a building addition. It's probably not going to happen. So it's really important and critical for us to get it right each and every time and give you guys back what you deserve in energy savings. So let's just go through some of your buildings real quick. And we did spend about 2 weeks on premise and in office crunching numbers to the best of our ability. We don't have anything even close to perfect, but it was enough to have a presentation. So we did, visit all your buildings. These are the size of your buildings, the square footages of each building. I won't go through them all step by step. It'll just make this a lot longer, and I'm winded enough. But so in the buildings, what we did see that you had is most of the lighting throughout the district was already upgraded to LEDs, which was done in your last performance contract, which is wonderful. It's great. It's good to have all that energy savings. The high school does have some interior downlighting and exterior fixtures that should be getting upgraded, which you could roll that into a new energy performance contract. Weber Gym needs to be upgraded. There are some new LEDs in there would be good, which I know the district was already working on, and I think they kind of put a hold on it until we saw what was going on here before you started investing more of your own money into it if you were able to do that through an EPC. And that goes for really all the buildings. There was very minimal lighting throughout the district that really needed some serious upgrading. Your big spaces were done. Your hallways, your classrooms, your libraries. There's a couple of straggler gyms left that still need something, but 98% of everything is complete. So in us reviewing all that, we said, well, there's not going to be a tremendous amount of lighting savings here because a lot of it's done already. But there is a little bit in doing this stuff, so we wanted to talk about other opportunities for savings and other ways to gain savings in your buildings. And some of the things that, is really happening in the school world is solar. We talked about solar, solar in a big way. There's a few different ways you could do solar. You could do it, on a rooftop, as you can see it in the picture here, in the lower corner. You could do it on a rooftop, you could do parking lot canopies, and then you could do it in open spaces. Those are the three places where, we saw opportunities here for Washington to add solar. Then,
Which the one thing on the solar is you do also have those 2 parcels of land, which really is a
Yes.
huge benefit to you guys. So really, out of besides Weber, every building can have it on their roof. But
Yeah.
those parcels are huge, because as you can see, you can get 1 million kilowatts per year. With adding those parcels, you almost double or triple that number.
So what you're showing us here does not, because I was
Yeah,
going to
so-
ask that, does not include the parcels.
Correct, so the million would
Yes.
just be for your roofs, with the exception of Weber, because of that roof would not be able to take, because of the slate and some of the angles.
Correct.
You really need 5 acres for, every million kilo. So if you're looking at it, depending on how much of, because you have 17 and 5, so 22, depending on how much you put on there, you could definitely need another 2 or 3.
So can you give us, what does that mean to us? I mean, okay, so what is 2 million kilowatts or 1 million kilowatts? What does that translate to? Is it a building that is going to be?
so very rough math, with all your buildings, is places that could receive solar, excluding Weber because of the slate roof,
Right.
we think we could get you 1 million kilowatt hours of electricity in just the rooftops. We also feel the same for your parking lots, you could probably gain another 1 million kilowatt hours. And then in your open spaces, as Tim was saying, for every 5 acres, you could gain, so if you think about it, you got 5 acres of roofs. That's a lot of roofs. So for every 5 acres of land,
Get 1 million.
you could get 1 million, so,
But
so
that 1
what
million-
does 1 million
Yeah,
equate to?
Translates
We're gonna crunch the numbers a little bit harder, but it does equate to about $150,000 a year, in equity. And for each million. So for every million, it's 150,000, and you think 150,000 times 18,
Yeah, it's
and that's what
approximately.
you get.
Okay, thank you, that's what I think.
When you say 150,000 in equity, is that a number that comes off the energy bill? Or?
So what it is
that more
after we
complicated?
do everything, you pay for the solar, you have this, there's 150,000 left in savings that you can now roll out into, you can take that 150,000 times it by 18, put that all together, and have that money, you use that towards other upgrades in the building.
That's the equity in that project, that energy savings gives you that from.
Now, I'm using these numbers, they're very rough numbers. You have to get the very
Yes,
smart
yes,
guys
yes.
back
Energy savings.
to
But-
really crunch those and do it a full audit,
The 18 is years?
Years.
years.
So about 150,000 in savings every year, but
Every
I
year.
know it's like different by year
And
depending
there's
on.
Yes.
escalation, so the cost is going up, so they're gonna quantify how much energy you're gonna save, but how much energy you're gonna save isn't always gonna be how much money you're gonna save.
Right,
right.
Because if we add additions, our cost is gonna go
So
up.
you could
Roundabout.
guess over 18 years, you crunch all the numbers, you get all your costs and all your stuff built into there. You're probably gonna have somewhere around, for every million, you're probably gonna have somewhere around 1.5 to $2 million that you'd be able to use to put towards other things in the building that
18
need.
years, right, over the 18
Yes.
years.
And as
Over
far
18
as,
years.
as far as our electric goes, we should see lower electric bills.
Well, that's the whole idea, is you'll see lower
It's
electric bills, and that
Right.
savings.
And that savings is,
will
right,
be part of it.
Right.
So you kind of get to use your lower electric bills money in advance.
Right. And would our community benefit from it? Like if we generated a lot of,
Over excess, so there's a real gray area there is how much the schools, like if we were to build, I think the 5 acre parcel is separate from all your buildings.
Correct.
So
And the
we
17.
couldn't build on there and then sell it back to the grid and make a profit. They don't allow that for public entities. So we have to figure out a way how we could either take that, so there's a couple of ways you could do it. Is we could do what they call a PPA, which is a purchase power agreement, and that's for that separate parcel. And what it is you actually, the solar company will pay for everything to go in, and then, thank you. And then what they do is, So let's just say they're gonna come in at 5 acre parcel, they'll do all the solar on it, won't cost you a penny. So they can sell it back to the grid now, so it's kind of backdooring the system a little bit. They can sell it back to the grid, make a profit, what they do is they share that profit back to you.
So it's revenue.
Yes. So the parcels that are connected to the properties, you could then connect those parcels and feed your building or buildings, feed them electricity. But if there is extra electricity, we do not allow the profit off it.
Smithtown has a situation where they produce more electricity than the school district uses. So, and again, as a municipality, they're not allowed to profit. So what they do is they sell it back to the energy provider, PSEG, and then they pass that savings on to the surrounding community as a savings. They pay less per kilowatt hour if you're in that community because you're getting that reduced energy
But that's
cost.
because they did a PPA. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes,
That's through
yes,
PPA.
correct.
It's not through this.
And also because
Well, that's missing with
their
the-
large
you
scale
can't-
solars are attached to the buildings.
Right,
So
yes.
they put that energy into the building, use all of that, and then have an
Whatever
excess.
the
That
excess is.
excess, again, because you're not allowed to profit it, that's what the utility
But
does.
there's a lot of things differently now that you can do with XS power, and one is put in battery systems. And then, keep that stored in a battery system at the school and then reuse it at nighttime. So there's little different ways of doing it now. And then one thing is for certain in this industry of energy conservation, the rules change every 30 days. It's constant, and it's always changing for the better. And when we get to the end, you'll see all different programs that are out there right now that, we're just waiting for clarity on.
So, I'm sorry, this
Mhm.
might be a little off topic, but if you had to have electric buses that you're doing, could you actually have a solar port that's generating energy for the electric bus? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and then would it be something that we don't have to have a separate, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it wouldn't be the PPA.
So let's just say if that 5 acre lot, we use that for a bus depot.
Right.
That could definitely be very well possible opportunity. Yes, because now you're using it. So we have to read the rules on that. Because sometimes with the SED, it's like, what's a learning space, what's this, what's that, what is that eligible for? We have to see what that particular off-site bus depot would be eligible for.
Not taking out the parcels out of it, but from the school building perspective, do we have any zoning issues or any issues with installing solar? I mean, I just only know as a residential issues that we have, if I was to put solar on my home, there are certain hoops we have to jump through, and we can only put so much. Are we at all restricted on any of this?
You're not restricted to how much you could put out. I'm sure there's definitely rules how close you could get to property lines and stuff like that. But you're really not restricted. And the nice thing about working in schools, even in school construction, is we're not really handcuffed to Port Washington's village rules. We're only handcuffed to New York State Education Department rules. They can come in and say they don't like the way something is, but as long as it is good with the New York State Education Department, we're good. They really have no say. Not to say we wouldn't want to be good neighbors and do the right thing and always make sure the space looks right and beautiful and nice, but we do work within a different set of guidelines. Sometimes they're a lot easier. Sometimes they're harder. So I don't want to say, we're immune to any issues because of SED. We're not immune, we still have SED issues. One is they're slow as heck up there. To get any paperwork pushed through, it can take 6 or 7 months. But it is nice because SED does realize, and this is why the state did it, that we have 10 weeks to really do big work in a school district. And kind of running off topic a little. And if they had to wait for a state, a local community, villages to inspect the electrical, to inspect the plumbing, we would never get a building. It would be just like your home, right?
Right,
And wait for the inspector to come, that would never happen in school. We'd never build anything, we'd be a dilapidated building.
Right.
So the state education department took all that over and says, no, this is our property, we're the state trumps city, and we go by our rules. So, for solar, the biggest opportunity that you have is solar. That's your biggest opportunity for savings, because all the LED lighting was done already, that your biggest opportunity for savings is definitely within the solar. We did talk about a ton of the things that need to get done in the district. And this brings me to one of my comments, with EPCs. In the building world, EPCs were really designed to do the not sexy work at school. If you went to the community and said, hey guys, we need $20 million to do unit ventilators and boilers, the community would be like, not interested, why do you need $20 million to do that? That's crazy. If you went to the community and said, hey, listen, I want to do school building additions, I want to do a couple of turf fields, I want to do this, everyone would be like, yes, vote yes, of course we want that. So this work is the non-sexy work, which really makes EPCs really valuable. Because nobody really, like at home, we're forced to change our boiler. We don't do it because we want to. Oh, it's almost there, its life's almost up, let's put a new boiler in. We wait for that thing to die, and then we put a boiler in. You guys are right there. Like your unit ventilators are knocking on the door. They're very, very old. You do have a couple of new ones, as you can see in this picture. The blue one up top is probably from the 60s. The lower one is probably from the early 2000s.
I think that was
Okay,
very
good.
nice.
With the exception of additions, all the unit ventilators are original to the building's construction. So,
Yeah, so you definitely have a serious
I'm
need
gonna say that.
for improving your unit ventilators. And it's something, regardless of doing this, you really need to address somehow, because they are old, and when they do all start, actually a lot of these, they don't even make parts for anymore. So you really have to harvest some of the ones you replaced and use them to fix the old ones if you weren't able to get everything done. So that was one place we saw where we need to get some work done.
You'll also see comparable numbers in univents to ACs. So
Oh,
places
yes.
have both, where if we were to update them, there's the opportunity to do them in one unit. So you're not running an AC and a unit ventilator, you're running a unit ventilator that does cooling.
Okay, so can we just stop for a minute? So you just go into option 2, it says to replace units with more efficient units with AC, right? I'm skipping the option 1 because I think if anybody in our the school-wide community heard, well, we're not gonna replace with AC, it just defeats what we wanna try to do. What does that mean? Does that mean we change all of them? Like, I couldn't just, and is there a savings? Like, how are we doing that?
So
How
this
are
is
we doing
still,
this?
this is still an initial assessment, we walk the buildings for 2 weeks.
Right.
At the end of this presentation, they're going to,
Okay, so I-
ask some questions to us about
Yeah.
investment grade audits, where they,
Okay.
again, those engineers are gonna come in, they're gonna do that, and then they're gonna present us with
No.
options and questions that the
Okay.
district
Okay,
has to.
okay.
So this is presentation 1 of several, is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
This is just a very preliminary,
Okay.
we looked at everything, we saw everything you have. Here's some
Where you have
opportunities, here's
opportunities to
things
make
that we
changes.
definitely think
Okay.
need to be done regardless, at some point. Unit ventilators being that, air conditioning, look, we're looking for energy savings. So where's the biggest energy savings? Eliminate air conditioning, that's a tremendous savings,
Well,
it's the
it's
craziest.
interesting that you say eliminate the window units, right? You're saying.
Correct. Yes.
So, because we have a lot of buildings with a lot of window units.
I mean, we have them all listed
Right
here.
Right.
There's over 200 window units.
So,
Which I can tell you, working in every district, that is a lot. You usually don't see that many.
but,
Oh, we have more than other districts, you're saying?
yeah,
Is it
Oh,
because,
yeah.
is it because other districts have already made the investment in a better way to air condition their buildings, or is it because there's less air conditioners?
They just don't air condition. Now, to say, there's some districts that air conditioning every square inch of their building.
Right?
You guys have a lot of air conditioning. You're on the definitely higher end of ACs, especially in classrooms for some of the older buildings. You're definitely on the higher end of other districts with air conditioning.
So
Which if that's the districts communities want, then they
I
choose.
know you may not be able to answer this question now, but as we're moving forward, a question that I have and will have is, air conditioning's been a hot topic in this community for the last couple of years because we have seen a climate shift.
Mhm.
And so we often have times, our hot time starts earlier at the end of the year and it goes longer into the fall. And there's been a lot of discussion among the community about the fact that we're testing all these kids at the end of the year, sometimes in buildings that are sweltering. and sending them back to school in the fall in buildings that are sweltering. I grew up on Long Island. In Counterpoint, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was hot for 1 week in June, right? Maybe it was hot for a little bit, maybe we had a day here or there that was really hot, and maybe we had one weird day at the end of September that was really hot. So it's a change, and if you think that kids need to be comfortable to learn, right, it's an educational issue. When this was raised in the past here for Brian, what we had heard was we would also need to upgrade our electrical tremendously.
Brian says that too.
Okay, yes, but for years we've been hearing this.
Yes.
But I think that was with the model of, can we add more window ACs? We would have to upgrade our electrical. So I think we'd also want to know, does that kind of upgrade have to happen if we were to replace all these units with heat AC units?
I'm gonna say most likely,
Okay.
but we would need to do our audit really to determine.
So
Centralizing the cooling still does provide savings over individualized circuits each one, but centralized chiller units still need a large amount of electric. So we're still at a, again, when you think about a classroom, when these buildings were built in 1955, what was electric in that classroom? The lights, and probably that's it. Now we get smart boards and computers and air conditioners. So as we've added this electrical load, we're at a point where we have to, update the electrical infrastructure. But again, that can be one of the projects that the equity of an EPC or the equity of solar, again, normally it would be lighting and solar, lighting is done, so we're.
It's
focusing more on
something,
solar.
it's
That's
something that can be
the
put
equity
into
for that
that
project
cost.
can pay for. And that would all be in an initial, investment grade audit where they would tell us exactly the kilowatts, the savings, down to the pennies.
And we'd be
And
doing
you
it
can
in
see
a
that,
smart
we can
way.
go over, not in this setting, but we can go over the 2017 EPC. We can look at each year, they do a measurement verification to show you, this is how much energy we thought we were gonna save, this is how much energy you saved, this is where those dollars went. So we can go through that.
Thank you.
I think we should probably stop. Stop interrupting.
No, that's okay.
I feel like.
And I don't disagree with anything you said. I definitely feel like it's been hotter now than it was when I was a kid. But when I was a kid, I slept at 80 degrees at home, we didn't really have AC. But
But we've
it's
had days where
imperative.
it's up, if it's 100 degrees in the building,
it's,
like how can you expect kids
And
to
the
learn?
doors
So all of the new additions have included cooling, and the bond does provide for large space cooling in each building. So we are putting in some measures to counteract that, but that's something that, a lot of districts are looking at. SED also does right now have a minimum temperature. They do not have a maximum temperature, but it's something that they've discussed over the last few years. So that's something that we see on the periphery of coming down, that if they enact the maximum temperature, districts are going to have to either provide cooling or be prepared to, make alternative adjustments. Something that they don't want.
If you could show that it's actually saving energy and cost by switching to univents as opposed to window units, is that?
the savings is gonna be surely in technology, right? You're definitely your window units, they're not even that old, they're just more efficient, they're contained into a unit ventilator. And then with the current existing unit ventilators, they're definitely nowhere near as efficient as they could be, not even close. You probably could cut that down to half
So this
of what
would
you
be
got
considered
currently using.
energy saving.
There is, so the thing is, just to be clear, replacing a unit ventilator is expensive. It's very expensive. So gaining those savings back quickly is a lot harder than you would if you changed out, light fixtures. A light fixture costs $200, a unit ventilator with AC costs $50,000. And you need
A lot.
a lot.
And one other,
Like 300.
one more point on ACs is right now we have 200 ACs that we don't control.
Right.
Somebody comes in, turns it on, turns it full blast, opens the
Doesn't
windows,
turn it off.
runs it in January. At our recent heads meeting, we asked the head custodians to turn the circuit breakers off during the winter because we're finding, rooms that the heat and the AC are running at the same time. So if you want to talk about energy savings, that's an energy savings, to have a centralized control, to be able to set the temperatures like we do with the heat, to be able to monitor through our BMS system. There is potential for savings. Again, it's a huge
Right.
investment for unit ventilators. They are a very expensive upgrade, but there is, each one of those little pieces of savings will hopefully offset some of the costs.
And also will be a huge maintenance savings for Brian and the staff, because in each room now we're only maintaining one unit compared to multiple.
This summer, we talked about the large investment we did on unit air conditioners, and they're becoming more and more consumable. Again, some of that is because they're running 24 hours. They're running in the winter in a low ambient temperature when they really shouldn't be. So, that would all add to that energy savings.
And during, a full investment grade audit, we would go through and talk to everybody in all the buildings and see when they use them, how often they use them, and crunch all those numbers, into a real savings or a real opportunity. Any more questions on AC and unit ventilators? We're good?
Yes.
Again, clearly not the sexy part of building a school building, but vitally important. So going on from unit ventilators, there are some rooftop units. You guys do have a lot of rooftop units, as most schools do. And most of them are in pretty good condition. There wasn't a lot of them that we saw that really needed a lot of help. Sousa and Manor Haven, the ones over the gyms, we saw were a little aged. We probably could start using some consideration for replacement. And you could put them new with air conditioning and fresh air. In Weber, replace the units in the library and auditorium, consider new ventilators with air conditioning again, and the same for the gyms and cafeterias. But for overall, a lot of them are in pretty good shape. They were either newly replaced or not that old and maintained well. There's just a few of them that could definitely use it. So another opportunity savings, and this is one of them that every school has an electrical transformer, and usually ESCOs overlook them. They don't think of them that much, but putting new electrical transformers in could definitely save tremendous amount of money with electricity loss. And this is the electricity that's being sent out through the lines that gets, it just disappears. It just, it evaporates, before it gets to where it's supposed to be. And this would help, reduce some of the loss that we would gain in that. So overall, we put some very preliminary numbers on some of the things we were able to get numbers on in a 2-week span. So some of the opportunities for energy for the interior, electric and transformation, obviously the little bit of lighting that's left is not a lot of lighting left. I mean, we're thinking $50,000 to $100,000 in costs. This is actually cost to change what lighting you have left to change it. There's not a lot of lighting left at all. The steam boilers, we weren't able to have enough time to put a number on all of them. So we'll work on that. The transformers, the same. We didn't get enough time to grab the numbers out of them. It's funny, ever since COVID, everything has slowed down, but just getting quotes from large manufacturers it's never increased. It's never gotten any better. It's almost like COVID's still here. We only need about 6 weeks to do that. I'm like, you're trying to sell something. You think you get surprised fast, especially when you're talking, 10 boilers and 300 unit ventilators, we'd be able to get quick pricing. But not so much on those two items. On unit ventilators, it's something that we do replace often in school districts or with new additions, so we did have the numbers on those. So to replace all your unit ventilators with air conditioning is somewhere around $17 million. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. And that was part of the thing when I said, put it out to the community and ask for $20 million
Right.
and say, we want to replace these. And they'd be like, no, they work now, right? That's good enough.
So it's really $5 million to do the air conditioning.
Correct.
Yes.
Right, so it's one or the other, right?
Mhm.
Correct.
So when you look at it that way, it's not
Yes,
as
it's a
bad.
better sale.
The $5 million eliminates all your AC units in the windows
Yeah.
and gets you all into one unit more efficient.
Which, it looks a lot better and it certainly
There would be
reduces the
energy
energy.
savings, right?
Absolutely
There
right,
would be.
100%
Correct.
And can you
Yes.
calculate the energy savings?
We will. Yes, we would definitely do that with the
Because that would be
audit.
a number to,
Absolutely, and we're gonna crunch all that stuff, right down to pumps in the boiler room, to water pumps in the kitchen, we go through every single electrical component in the building and measure it all and figure it all out and crunch the numbers, and that's what those really smart guys that are at the Super Bowl do, and then they come back to me and say, here's what we got.
Yeah, I'm very confused with the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah,
but I'm good.
65,
But
yes,
keep
yeah,
going,
yeah.
keep going.
You have a question? Sure.
Great.
No,
Yes.
I.
We had an original
seen
estimate.
numbers that are very different than this, and we've also been told, this is pre-price.
I hope these numbers are low.
They are much lower, they're much lower,
We were
yes,
also
significantly.
told, again, pre-Brian, that we could not do solar. We had, correct, Rachel? I mean,
Yes,
we-
That was on my
yes,
question.
we've all
We've
been
been
told
told
our roofs cannot do
We've
solar.
had community.
You're definitely gonna need some roof repairs, if not replacement on some of these buildings. So,
To handle the solar?
it's not a matter to handle, it can handle it, like it physically can handle the
So right
weight
now,
of the
the way
solar.
we are
But
right
you
now.
don't wanna put brand new solar panels on a roof that's leaking.
Correct.
It just wouldn't make any sense.
I thought what we were told was that in order for it to be aidable, it has to be on a new roof or a roof that like qualified as a renewed kind of roof. Do you remember?
So
My
how many-
recollection is that our roof, the composite of our roofs were such that we were not
There was
allowed.
like
Yeah,
There were
yeah,
no-
so
Wait, let's ask
Sorry, go ahead,
Yeah,
yes.
So if we go back a few years ago, the solar was tied into the roof system,
That's
whereas now the solar sits on top of the roof system. So that's one change that's come in the last few years in the industry, where some roof systems wouldn't be able to accommodate solar previously,
Now they
and now
can.
it's just
Okay,
ballasted.
yeah, that's great.
Secondly, SCD would not approve a solar project on a roof that's over a certain amount of years old, it's
Right,
in
that's
poor
the piece,
condition,
right.
that's not warranted.
And now
But
we can
again,
upgrade
if
it.
the solar is going to give you some project equity, you would take that equity and you would
Upgrade the
repair,
roof at the
replace,
same
or restore the
time,
roof
right.
before you put the solar on. You'd never put solar on a roof that put in for.
You
know,
just said the
solar
key
content.
thing, things have changed at SCD that we.
And even with technology, things
No,
have
no,
changed.
no,
most
I
things,
think
right?
that it's both, he's saying the
Yeah, yeah,
technology
right.
has changed, and also Brian's looking at it a different way and using the
No, no,
equity.
no, no.
District has done some roof
Right.
upgrades,
We have.
there's a 5-year roof plan, and then again, some of this equity could be used if that roof wasn't applicable for solar as it is, the roof would be repaired prior to the solar going.
So can I ask, in the roofs that need to be repaired where we have leakage, are those the roofs that we've already repaired, or are those the roofs that are awaiting repair? 'Cause we-
No, the
right
roofs-
where-
the roofs that we've repaired are in good shape. there's no
Okay,
warranty.
yes.
There are some.
Okay, goodness, I just have to
Again,
ask.
Weber is not applicable because of the type of construction.
Right.
Schreiber has 2 large roofing projects that are on the next 2 years.
Yes.
We did a small Schreiber and Salem project this year, and then this coming summer, we have Manor Haven, Daly, and Weber, and a small section of Weber being re-roofed. So again, all those roofs would be under warranty and able to accommodate solar. Any roof part of Schreiber that wasn't, depending on the timeline of this project, if this project was going to pay for it, then we'd be able to reallocate those capital funds to something else, because
Right.
we wouldn't need to wait 2 years to do that.
For the next iteration of this, I think when you're giving us more detail on the solar saving, I would appreciate seeing a breakdown of adding each parcel of land separately, not mushing them together.
Well,
yeah.
there will be a menu of options, so there will be more detailed.
Because right now, one parcel is
information.
being used
Yeah.
partly, and the other one is not being used at all, and so I think we're gonna wanna have a conversation where we really weigh these things,
The
not just.
engineers
Yeah,
will
yeah.
give the board full, autonomy over those decisions, how much solar do you want to go to, whether it's only rooftop, whether you want to consider parking lots. Districts often consider, some of them do similar to the courthouse or the government buildings, where you're under all
Yes.
canopy parking lots, or some just do perimeter. Again, we have drivers at Triber, tight spots, some, do we want some of these? So that those are all district-driven decisions. We make every one of those decisions, but again, the more solar you use, the more project equity you get to do other facility improvements.
We just add some rubber
So-
poles around the ones with the new drivers parked.
Yes. So, and I wanted you to be able to finish the rest of your presentation, but I guess I'm now already at the next steps on this for what makes it most advantageous for us and what we need to do to move forward, what the recommendation is, Brian, for you. I also want to make sure that it's wonderful that board members are here hearing this great presentation, but knowing our board, we will have many questions. And so at the more in-depth presentation, I would like to look forward to having the entire board present and really making that a substantial conversation, maybe at the community level as well, when you're going to have more detail, because I think then even more questions will come out, and it's best if you don't have to repeat yourself 7 times. Do you agree with
I
that,
agree
Rachel?
totally.
Okay, if that's appropriate for a next step, because I'm thinking the next step, you'll do an audit, as you were saying, the investment audit, and then at the conclusion of that is when you present the varied menu of options, now taking these big picture opportunities and really honing in on them and giving us the realistic opportunities with financial dollars associated with it.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, so, once upon doing, an investment grade audit, that would really that would paint the full picture. Here's what we got, here's what we need, and then it would say, and here's what we could save potentially to use towards upgrades to the building. Now, just so I don't want to disappoint anyone later, is you guys have a tremendous amount of projects that need to get done with unit ventilators and boilers and maybe even a little bit of roof replacements or fixing. There's no way anyone could cover all of this
Right.
in one fell swoop. It'd be virtually impossible. So there will be a decision that would have to be made if we chose to go down that route as to, okay, here's our savings and here's what we would like to do with it, which is a huge decision by you guys. What we'll do is just paint the picture of, here's the potential savings, here's what we definitely think you'll have left over that you could use to do building upgrades, and that would be up to you guys as to where you wanted to allocate, but in no scenario is there one where we said, we're gonna be able to get all this covered. Every single thing you want is gonna be covered. No, I think you'll be able to get a decent amount of stuff, but definitely not all. So I didn't want anyone to leave here thinking, wow, we're gonna get new roofs, new unit ventilators, new boilers, get the ACs put into unit ventilators, everything's all done, and it's gonna cost me the same electric bill I have now, that's awesome.
Right.
Not realistic.
What's the timeline from here? Maybe you were about to ask.
I was
that
about to
question.
ask that also, yes.
So to do an investment grade audit, it is extremely, extremely detailed. It takes a real comprehensive, they spend days in each building, talking with people, reviewing all the equipment, analyzing everything, and then bringing it back, and then doing all what I call the really smart guy stuff, where they crunch the numbers and squeeze everything out, and boom, here's what we got. That whole process is gonna take about 60 to 90 days to get that done. It is quite a labor-intensive process. So just to walk down that road a little bit, if you guys chose to do an investment grade audit, and let's just say you call me tomorrow and say, all right, Mike, we like what you have to say, let's go move forward. First, I want to bring you two things. There's a cost to an investment grade audit.
My next question.
So an investment grade audit couldn't possibly be free because it takes 90 days of work to do it, and so we'll put it all together and we'll have all this information for you. Now, if we chose to move forward with an EPC or a PPA, a power purchase agreement, or a combination of both, or all of that stuff, that money would be used and result into the project. If we put all this stuff together and then we handed you guys the big book of information and you guys chose not to do it, then we would need to get paid for handing that book over, which, I'm gonna tell you, it's not cheap, that,
Can you give us
all
amounts
all that work,
Approximately what?
it is probably about $90,000 worth of work. So it's not cheap to do that investment grade audit, there is a price to it, but the goal is, there's going to be something at the end of this, something you'll be able to get done, and that money will get absorbed right into the contract.
Have you ever seen a district not move forward with a project after doing the?
Once you get that far down the road, you're pretty committed to doing the project.
Would you ever do the report and say, it's not worth it to do? Like,
I think we kind of had those conversations already with, just when you walk into a building, for me being on the energy side, I walk in, I see LED lighting everywhere, and I'm like, oh, there's not a lot here. But then knowing we have open space, we have a lot of rooftops, like, okay, there's something here. There's definitely some opportunity. Solar has changed that game. if you came back 15 years ago and you said, well, we got this brand new building, it's got all LED lights in it and everything else, I'd be like, you guys are pretty much done, like, you got it all covered. Solar definitely changes that game.
I know you have it on your next thing, and I don't want to keep interrupting either, but the Inflation Reduction Act also is making
Yes.
solar very different. So we talked about why you could do solar a few years ago, why solar has changed. This is relatively new. We're pending more information at the end of the month, but it relates to 5 energy performance FIMs, or city improvement measures, solar being the big one, where districts are eligible for up to 30% funding on top of our state aid, on top of the equity from the project. So that could really make solar much more advantageous than it was 90 days ago. There's a timeline on that. The project has to be started by December 31st of next year. Completed early, but it has to be started by that.
2024.
And we do see,
2024.
yes, and we do see most of similar, acts like this get extended over and over and over again. They don't go away in the past, anything similar to this has, but right now there is a time constraint to that. So we have to be able to confirm that we could fit this project and the construction.
Leave it to the federal government to give you a deadline and still not give you the rules.
Right.
So while we did that energy audit, we did that thorough investment grade audit, there's a few other things that we're gonna consider while doing it. And the few of the things is solar, it's currently eligible for federal grants now, which is separate from the IRA, which is the Inflation Reduction Act. So there could be that federal grant money, then there is definitely a pocket of money where we're gonna get through the Inflation Reduction Act. For sure, it does stay 30% now, we're gonna look to see
6%
what direction, if
now.
anything, that goes, if they stay 30, it could go to 40, it could go to 20.
I'm sorry, is it 30% with voter approval, or that's?
That's just a flat 30% to the district, or to
It's just 5
anyone
metrics.
doing solar,
And for each
within a
metric you hit,
municipality.
you get to a higher threshold. All municipalities start with 6. There's another threshold that makes us go to a minimum of 30 for school districts, and then there's other ones. If you're a low socioeconomic area, you get another 15%. If the project includes multiple FIMs, you get another. So it can go all the way up to 75% of funding. Again, that's before your state aid, so there's a huge amount of savings there. But every
That's all the stuff, we just need to kind of hang for the next 30 days and get those answers on.
But-
Because,
In order to do any of that, we would still need to do
The
this
investment audit.
investment grade
Yes.
audit. So that's regardless, right? So solar, whatever, we would still need to do this.
yeah,
part.
even if you said, hey, you know what, Mike, I just want to do solar,
We
I
still
just
need to
wanna
go
do
through
solar,
the
period.
process, right?
you still gotta do this process.
Right.
Because they're gonna want to give you the money, you're gonna want to really see what, why would you just throw millions and millions of dollars of solar on a roof and not know what you're gonna get for it?
Right,
You
okay.
wanna know ahead of time, what am I getting for this investment?
Okay.
So, there's the ESSER funds that you guys probably received already earlier on. That's floating around out there. There's options for human-centric lighting, which is really, really cool right now. It's really the next wave of lighting. So human-centric lighting, if you think about like the human body, when you wake up in the morning, you see the sun come out, you kind of like, oh, I feel late, this is great. By, noontime, the sun's bright in the sky, you're like, you got all your energy, you're feeling
You got
good.
your coffee.
What's that?
You get your coffee.
You get your coffee.
Well, our cell
No,
phone.
that's at 3:00, when you know the sun's gonna go down and things, so the body is completely controlled by lighting, and then more and more research they realize is, if they adjust the lighting during the day in the schools, this will help the kids learn better, they become a little less sleepy in the afternoon, a little more awake in the morning, so they have this human-centric lighting, which they're really, really focusing on, especially in special ed rooms right now. It's a tremendous asset that we found in the special ed rooms right now, where they have, controlling that lighting really helps these kids pay attention more, learn a little bit better. So, ironically, we partnered up with a company that their spokesperson is someone you may have heard of. His name is Mariano Rivera. And he's working with this human-centric lighting company, and he is like all in. We've spoken about the district, And they were like, we want to do 2 classrooms there. You know, just right off the bat, let's just do 2 classrooms for them and show them what we got. And I was like, well, let's just get the process going first before we start giving them free stuff. But we will take it. But,
What's the name of the company?
It's called the Shine Program.
the Shine Program.
We're Mets fans, so thanks for coming in.
We're not.
We all have our shortcomings. I'm a Giants fan, a Jets fan.
And that
It's a long shortcoming.
Where they can send over the informal program.
We've seen it, we've definitely seen it, you know, our teachers are doing it on a lower scale, but we, you know, most of the constellation of our fire marshal, we've seen a lot of lamps for the reading areas, and the teachers, you know, are definitely aware of the softer lighting for certain activities, so.
It definitely, it's a pretty new technology, which is becoming very, I think within 10 years, it's gonna be mandatory. And then there's the rebates through PSE&G, because they do have rebates for solar programs. So there's a lot of other opportunities to gain savings without just the savings of electric. So we'll look into all of that, and then by the time we get the audit done, we'll have crunched those numbers, we'll know what this is by then, and then you'll have a very realistic report as to everything that is there. It'll be very comprehensive. And then last but not least is the educational opportunity. You know, in doing this process, we would, and it was requested by Kathleen and Brian, that we get some of the kids involved, some of the kids that may be more interested in electrical engineering and stuff like that, is getting into the process and working with them, just to show them how we crunch numbers, how we do all this stuff, how the lighting's measured, how the electric's measured coming out of the boiler or out of the breaker panel. You know, which I think would probably be a fun little project for some of the kids, just to see in real life how this all works. You know,
Not
so
only during the design, but also after it's built.
Yeah.
Some of the energy performance contracts, the Energy Conservation Center down at Jones Beach, you know, has that where you're constantly seeing how that energy is being saved, where it's being used. You know, it's a real thing that you can use in education moving forward.
And then there's a last page that didn't get on here, but it's on here, basically, is listing everybody, listing all your stuff, and really that closes it out when we say that.
This is very thorough.
Great, thank you.
Before, does the committee have any more questions while we have you here? I'd like to open it up to the community.
Absolutely.
Table has any more? No?
I'm good.
You're good? I'll go to Deborah Brooks, she's also a board member.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just have one question. With the unit ventilators, do they, in a particular building or a wing of a building or a floor of a building, can you replace them at different times? And is there so mechanically, yes, they can be replaced at different times, but is there an economy of scale replacing them all at the same time, or in a floor, you know, if we decided that we couldn't, if we wanted to fund little by little, what would be the most efficient way to do it, cost-effective way to do it? So it could be,
Easiest way would to do it by phases or by groups. So if you're doing, say, at Weber, and you say you're gonna do 10 in each building, is do the 10 in a building at a time. So do Weber at one time, then move to the high school, whatever it is. And that would just be because of the mobilization, and, there would be a standard spec. We have no issue getting all the material up front, even though it may not be going in for 3 or 6 or 9 months. But it's something we could, that would
So
be the
building
easiest
at a
way.
time, building at a time.
That rather than doing 1 or 2 in each building because of the mobilization, a lot of times you're taking stuff offline, so it's easier to take 6 or 10 rooms offline than 2 or 3
And
in
you
5
generally
buildings.
do it over the summer, right? Like you said, you have like a
A lot
certain
of-
period of
a lot
time.
of
A lot of certain stuff, you could be done in the evenings.
Evenings
Yeah,
and breaks.
you'd be able to take out the unit ventilator and put a new one in one night. But I
Yes.
think maybe to help further your question, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if, let's just say we did a budget, we said, you guys could definitely get 100 unit ventilators. The most cost-efficient way is do 100 in one building. That is the most cost. Now, not every building will like that, because someone's getting all brand new ones. But yes, the most cost-efficient way is to do them all in one building, because then you're in one spot, you don't have to mobilize twice, and you can run right through and get your most bang for your dollar.
because I'm thinking in some buildings, especially with the air conditioning, the second floor is is like being in hell, actually.
Mhm.
Really, really, really hot. Everybody's sweating and roasting during those hot times. And I'm thinking if we had to budget, is it feasible to do just one floor or one section? So they're not, in other words, they're not all connected with each other. It's not they're on a line
Yeah.
where the one impacts the other, impacts the next one like a domino. We could pick and choose.
Yeah, I mean, look, you always, the most feasible way, to answer the feasible part of the question is to do it all in one section, like the second floor, first floor. You can pick this room, but not this room, and that room, and not that room. Maybe not the most economic way to do it, but definitely doable. Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like the broad answer is in phases of some kind, but like make the phase
In
that
phase.
geographically that they're all
I mean,
near each
our
other.
assumption would be, if you were to move forward, we're able to replace 100 unit ventilators, you'd probably look at each of the buildings, divide them up and say, okay, these are critical ones in this building, this is critical in that building, that's critical. I mean, that's the way a lot of districts would do it, was of the raft they would get from the buildings they did nothing in.
I mean, I think that Deborah's question sort of hints at information we would want in the next phase too, which is like, where are the efficiency points here? I think she's anticipating that we could say, well, we can't actually fund doing every single room in every single building at once, even with these savings. And so then what we're gonna wanna know is some common sense advice about how to make it cost efficient but still fit into budget. I think that's what you're getting at.
I mean, let's just say we got to that scenario, I would definitely say, do your second floors. You know, that's your hottest space. And even if you cool down the cool, you know, the cool air always sinks down, you know.
And we would be able to prioritize that again based on, decisions, age, there's a lot of other factors.
Yeah.
But the it's district-driven decision. We would be able to prioritize where that funding went.
Mhm. I mean, our job is we're just gonna figure out, okay, here's how much you got, what do you guys wanna do?
Right, of course. I open up to Sarah, Mr. Neal. No, this is great, okay.
Good.
It was so, I'm assuming next steps then in this situation is that if we wanted to go forward with the investment audit, you would be submitting a proposal of what that would cost and the terms and agreements
Yeah.
to Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham would then present to the board with that information and we would come to some resolution based on the recommendation of both Mr. Graham and Ms. Manuel. So I don't, is that the direction we're going or is that not the direction we're going?
I think you're saying,
I think, yes, I think I'm not.
So me and Ms. Manuel decided that there's opportunities here and there's potential to provide funding for needed infrastructure upgrades. We met with multiple ESCOs, we wanted Review to present to you because we feel they have
This is
service.
what you like.
We would like to, receive a proposal from them, we would present it to this committee with the hopes that this committee would present it
a
to.
proposal for the energy audit or a proposal passed?
For the
So
audit.
are you, I'm asking, right, you've already said that it would cost $90,000 for the energy.
Approximately.
He said that.
Okay, so do we have an actual proposal and that we want?
That's what you're gonna get to us.
We would get that next, this is again a
Right.
fast moving project, this was in the last couple of weeks, we walked the buildings each night, we've identified that there is savings, again, if this presentation would have been much quicker, if we had walked the buildings and there had been substantial lighting, it would have been,
Yes.
hey, we could save millions of dollars, and
So
we're
can I
prepared.
can I
Because
just
that
make a
solar,
recommendation?
because lighting wasn't available, and because solar is really a district decision on where you want to put it and where you're comfortable using it, and even further complicating that is, are we comfortable looking at, some land-based solar on those two parcels? We wanted this committee and
To have this first.
make
So
it.
can I just make a recommendation, just in the, because what I'm hearing is that it takes 60 to 90 days to do it. I've also heard that there is federal funding that will be available until the end of 2024. Can I recommend that instead of bringing the investment grade audit proposal just to this committee?
No, I would have to bring it to the
I
board.
would bring it to the entire
Yes.
board for, so I would present it to the board and.
You were out of the room when we talked about the next stage also, which also was the actual presentation, but
Because
yes.
I think that we can, as a committee, tell the board and get the board
Mhm.
on board tomorrow night on what our plans are, and then just be ready for a yay or nay from the board next
So
week as
the-
opposed to.
The questions that the board will have, and also that we haven't addressed is, if we are moving forward with this cost of $90,000, is that currently budgeted for? Do we have money in the budget at this
I
point,
believe-
or?
What was shared is, the 90,000 is only if we decide not to move forward with an actual energy performance plan.
100%.
So the 90,000 will get absorbed into the.
True, but I always like to plan for the worst scenario, which is if we end up having to pay the 90,000, where would that money come
It
from?
hasn't been budgeted.
It hasn't been budgeted for, so, and I see Ms. Brooks is raising her hand, yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay.
Is there more at your end?
No.
So I'm just wondering about the project start date by December 2024. Incredibly, it will be here before we know it. What does start by mean? Does that
No,
mean-
not project start date, that's not what I said.
No, not you.
No, the funding, the federal funding
For the act.
is only available as long as a project is started, right?
Right,
yes,
So it has to do with project funding.
I understand. I
Right,
understand.
but I think she's assuming that we would want to start it in a time to get.
So
that
my
federal
question is, what does start by mean in order to get the federal funding? Because if the audit's going to take 60 to 90 days, we're already into now the summer, right?
Close.
And then we have a year and a half to
So-
be able to either come up with the money, this 12 million or whatever we decide to do, which I'm going to guess is not gonna be in our budget. It's gonna maybe be something from somewhere else. We don't have enough money in the capital reserve, so we have to get the scratch to do this. So I'm just wondering, what does start by mean? Does that mean ordering supplies? Does that mean purchase orders? Does that mean we have a signed contract with you? Does that mean we're breaking ground?
It would
Yeah.
literally be signing your contract and then us at least placing an order. You know, that would kind of constitute starting the project. And that's a gray area too.
The act was passed, but the guidelines have not come out. We are anticipating it by the end of February, and that will have a lot more of that information in there. In the industry, we've seen projects start to mean some investment has been made. It doesn't mean, you have to have 30% of the roof. It doesn't mean you have to have physical construction. It just means some investment has been made, the project is underway. There's typically a 2-year lead time on these projects, so it's gonna be close again in the previous iterations
It'll
of
take a
all
little
of these
hustling to get it. underway.
IRAs. They have been, generally extended, in perpetuity. We've seen in all the other investment inflation reduction.
So I would just hate for us to say, we're gonna put our eggs in this basket and think we have this funding and then we don't start by.
So what they're recommending actually is that any savings that you would achieve from the Investment Reduction Act be used as a second phase. So, almost that, this way it's there, you do your FIM, you do your facility improvement project, you get that equity out of that, you fund this project, and then that savings that you get from the Inflation Reduction Act funds the second phase, and again, if you're talking about unit ventilators, we are able to do 100, maybe we get 30% back from the Investment Reduction Act, we do another 25, that's how they're recommending it because it's new and because there's a lot of information that hasn't been released yet.
And with the audit, we'll hopefully have all that information by then, I'm sure we will, and then we'll be able to answer all those questions.
So in terms of timeline, we do have to move quickly, but we think it is possible to do so.
Yeah,
So
and I didn't want to give that hard sell, because I just didn't want you guys to think like, well, that's just him saying, move this project along. But yes, you do kind of gotta hustle a little bit
Right.
to enable to meet those deadlines.
So, I didn't mean to cut you off, do you have more?
Good.
So with that in mind, I think, if Julie, in your update, you briefed the board on the fact that we had this conversation where Brian stands on it, where Kathy stands on it, where the committee stands on it. And then, is it possible to have the proposal for the next full board meeting? I'm assuming by
That's in
tomorrow
March.
night it's not realistic.
I mean, we definitely have it by March.
Right.
I gotta have it to you by tomorrow.
Oh, well, that's our board meeting is tomorrow.
We have a board meeting tomorrow night.
The
I'll
issue I
have to
have
use
is
that
I
for
actually
notes.
think, I think both Brian and, Kathy will be there, but I think Brian should also be there to present to the board on this because they are going to have a lot of questions about all of this. And I don't think that my update is going to be able to suffice to answer all of their questions, in my opinion, by tomorrow. Or at least we should be prepared.
You're gonna ruin
we'll give
Brian's
them-
Valentine's Day too.
I'm gonna ruin your Valentine's Day.
No, I don't.
If we want to do it tomorrow. The
Yeah.
other, I mean, the other thing is that if the proposal can be ready by March 7th, maybe what we need to do is we need to give some information to the board in the packet, right? Inform them of this information, tell them what's coming, and shoot for that, I think it's March 7th is our meeting, that March 7th date to have an approval of the
We can have a
proposal.
discussion as a board. on
We can
March
have,
7th.
we can also have a discussion, but they'll at least have more information in that. I think rushing it. Yeah, you could also.
Sure. Would you mind speaking to the entire board, like in March?
I have no problem.
Okay.
I'll
Because that's the other thing, I
Or a
just,
wall, doesn't matter.
I think this committee thinks it's a good idea to move forward with this, but I want everyone to feel comfortable with this. I want all the questions to be answered, and I want the experts to be able to answer whatever questions may come as opposed to guessing. And I think, I don't want to just thrust this upon them urgently. I want everyone to have time. So if we feel like that's okay, I'd like, if we could give the board some information, maybe Brian, if you could write something up for them.
Actually send this
We can
to the
send
board
this to the
too.
board as well. We can prepare them for it. If you have the proposal in advance of March 7th, it's always nice for the board to look at it so they can have their questions in advance and ready. And then we can shoot for that as an agenda item in March for discussion, if there's more discussion to be had. That sound
Sounds
good?
like a plan.
And you think March 7th is fine?
Do you think that's okay?
Okay.
Okay. You're okay with that?
And then just from that point, if they say go, we'll make sure we're prepared to really hit the ground running.
Got
Because at that point forward, we really need to hit the ground running.
Well, and we'll also know by March if the Inflation Reduction Act has passed, if, we'll have
Yeah,
much more
And we'll have a
information
little
at that
clarity as
point.
to what exactly
Hopefully.
is in there, which will
Yes.
help with the process, but we still do have to do the audit to see what that turns into dollars, how that turns into.
100%.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
All right.
Well, gentlemen,
Thank you.
thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your
This is
time,
great.
for
Thank
the
you, everyone.
thoroughness of all of this. This is wonderful. Thank you. And you have this, you're sending this to Brian
Yeah,
electronically then?
yeah, he has it electronically,
Oh,
we actually
wonderful.
give the, you don't trust our home drives.
If you have 3 extra, we can just
Yeah,
take
we
them
can give
and
them to the board, that's
board
true.
to-
I'll do that tomorrow, yes.
We should have more made up for the whole new batch for the board if you'd like.
No,
We just,
need the board.
we are, we'll just keep 3 more of us right here, Rachel, and we'll hand it out to them.
It's really easy. Adam, Annette, and Adam.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do that. We just want it electronic so we can post it online and then share.
Oh, that's right, you have it, I just want to add that last page, for some reason it fell off of it, but I'll add that last page.
So I'll wait to get an updated one from you, before
Yeah,
we share it with
sure.
the board, and then I'll share it with you,
Thank you.
and then you can put it on
With
the,
a little explanation, I think. What will you know, most helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great.
All right.
That's right.
Thank you so much, we really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
everyone.
Thank you so much, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm mindful of time and I know that you all have a meeting, and so I know we were gonna discuss the state aid run numbers and revenue aspect of it all, but I know you have a meeting and this went longer than anticipated, but I think necessarily it went longer than it should have. What is recommendation? Personally, if you wanna incorporate your conversation of the state aid numbers into the presentation tomorrow evening,
No, it's fine.
and if you would like to do a little bit of the revenue aspect, I would think that that would be most worthwhile, and we don't need to duplicate efforts. Would that be okay for everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question to Brian about, because so you do recommend, I mean, you recommend this company, right?
yes, yeah.
And so you went through a process, can you just,
Went through a process, we met with 4 of the leading ESCOs in the K-12 industry. One of them being our architect, but, one of them being Johnson Controls, who's the previous ESCO, one of them being Energia, and one of them being Renew Energy Solutions. And this is our recommendation based on those meetings and those initial proposals. The process would not change no matter who we use. Renew has been the primary contractor for Johnson and some of the other ESCOs, where this time they would be stepping up and filling in both of those roles. Similar to how the architect also in many districts will do both of those roles, be the architect and the ESCO.
so Renew was always contractors that worked for the ESCOs, and now they've gone into the
ESCO is
ESCO.
kind of like the middleman.
Yes.
And that's where we
So
lose some
now
of that profitability, and that's
now-
where we feel that 2017 project has been maybe more
Got it.
profitable. In my experience with energy performance contracts, 90% of your communication, your things that you have to work through are with the contractor. The contractor's the one doing the work. So we're looking to reduce that middleman and then increase the profitability of the project because there's not so much of,
The other benefit too, is sometimes like, they will go out and they'll pick who they want to work with you. With Renew, we can actually have input into, we want this vendor because we trust them. They know our electrical systems or things like that. It's a much better relationship. That's why we love it.
Again, Renew is one of the leading contractors in the K-12 industry. We just did both of our gym floors at Weber and Schreiber. I've done millions of dollars of
So you've
contract
worked
work
with them before?
And they work to our property also.
Yes.
Absolutely. And again, that's one of our bigger concerns, is some of these ESCOs are so pigeonholed with subcontractors that they use, on a large scale, so when they win that project, they kind of direct you on who's gonna do that mechanical, who's gonna do that ceiling and lighting.
And sometimes
we
they
get that.
call for you to come and fix what was done. So instead of, and cutting out that uncertainty, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes it much more district driven and that's what we really want to do, is we want to control the project. Not to keep harping on the 2017 EPC, but I think that's where some of that project could have been improved. The district had been more of the driver's seat, not the energy, not the ESCO making those decisions, because they're focused more on that profitability and that energy savings, where we're focused more on what's the work we can get, what's the quality of the work we can get. Barricade is always, it's a great physical
It is
example.
a
You can go
fantastic
there and
example.
log them and say that, they need to be brightened up, and they work. All of those fixtures were changed, but they were put in existing fixtures as opposed to changing them. You would have gotten that added benefit.
I mean, I have to say, on that example, like, that's where you sold me on obviously your appraisal of whether they are the people to do it, and also on them, because like, that's the piece that you don't have control over, whether you're hiring a contractor personally or as the district. You want somebody who is thinking and analyzing constantly on the other end, because that's a mistake that was made without any of us talking about it or thinking about it or being aware of it, but it's the kind of common sense thing that somebody on the ground should realize and notice and make a recommendation for.
And then the district did save money, there's a lot of good things that came out of the 2017 EPC. You saved a lot of money, and again, we go through the M&D report, and, I can include that in the presentation I'm making for the full board. There's a lot of environmental savings there, so there's a lot of good that happened. I don't want to keep that, but there was a lot of missed opportunities.
No, I understand.
That's where we have.
I think that's how you presented the
Yeah, we
missed
understood that you were
opportunities, yes.
not being the whole thing. It's that there are those little pieces that somebody with our level of expertise is literally never even going to know to ask that question to get to that point. And so you need somebody doing that kind of analysis. No, so we understand. Like, it was still a great project, right? We saved a lot of money.
Yes.
It's just, there were moments where we could have maximized and we didn't really want to.
Sure. And again, those are more of the contractor decisions and less of the ESCO decisions, and that's why we believe this is the best opportunity for the whole project.
I think they have a stellar reputation, like you call any schools that have dealt with them there.
I would just say in your packet, if you could just include also some of this background history of the process that you went through. I know they may be apprised, but how this became to Renew and just some of the, our control within it as a district if we do move forward with them from that standpoint. That would be most helpful as well.
Sure.
All right, anything else for anyone? All right. With that, we will conclude, and we're seeing everyone again for a budget meeting on Monday, March 13th. So at 9 a.m., same time, same place. And then we will really be talking about state aid numbers then, right? And the budget. So we'll be in the real thick of it all. So yes, with that, thank you guys. Oh, was there any other community questions? Sorry. Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys. Have a great one. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I supposed to do that?
I'll just,
You can hit end stream on it.
I'm cool.
I mean, oh, I see. It's been, our lovely task force,